What's up, Kit Kats? Oh, wow. What's up, Kit Kats? Welcome back to my channel. My voice is still gone from the Arnold. And then also from going to see Eliza on Saturday, who was hilarious. But anyway, welcome to the video. Got an itch in my eye. I'm about to go work out. I think what we're gonna do today, well, I'm training upper body, that's what I'm doing. So I'll get some clips of that, but I also want to do a bit of a video explaining my training journal to you guys because I get a lot of questions about that, why I use one, how I use it, all that good happy stuff. So let's go. You ready? You ready, Luna? No. Look at this big girl. She turned 3 yesterday. She says, I'm 3 years old. Who's a good girl? You want to go work out with me? Yes. Yes. And can we just take a moment to appreciate these sunglasses? When I wear them, sorry, there's like a big sunspot. When I wear them, I feel like I'm like Lady Gaga going skiing. Which is a vibe that I never knew that I wanted, but I do. So yeah, these are my movement sunnies. You guys, I've worked with them for, it's at least 3 years at this point, I think. It's 3 probably, yeah, I think it's about 3. But I always love their stuff and they're just leveling it up all the time. So as usual, you can use the code MDUNK15 at checkout for 15% off your order. And get yourself some cool glasses. But we can all go on a nice ski trip, maybe get a lodge, sit by the fire, drink some hot chocolate. It's gonna be a good time. All right, you guys, so we are going to dive into the discussion on my training journal and how I set it up. So first and foremost, the primary reason I use a training journal is because I believe in logging your training and following a consistent set training program. I'm not a big fan of auto-regulatory programming where you just go into the gym and kind of do whatever you want every single day. I find that to be not very efficient from a progression standpoint, and so I do prefer to have set programming. If you guys have been around for a while, you know I've been that way for a while. Ever since my first contest prep back in like 2014, I've been that way. And so having something like a training journal helps you be able to track that. So I personally have always tracked my training, especially in the context of working with a training coach. So whether it was when I was Olympic lifting back, you know, over 3 years ago, or whether it's now working with Alex, I do have to report my training volume to my coach every single week. So it's just a lot easier for me to have something like this. One, because I enjoy it. I like being able to physically write out my workouts and then be able to go back and look at them over time. But also from a technical logistical standpoint, I have to be able to type in all of my weights and all of my reps and everything into an Excel spreadsheet at the end of every week when I do my check-ins. So that's not just something that I can recall from memory. It's something that I would have to have written down in order to remember. So for one, I use it for efficiency's sake, but two, I do believe in tracking your training. And it's also really cool to be able to go back and look at, you know, what I've done in the past. Whenever I go home to my parents' house, I have some of my very, very old training journals there. And it's just very cool to see, you know, how things have changed over time and how I've progressed over time. Now, when it comes to my actual layout of my training journal, pretty much just the way that I write things out is I will write I don't want to show you guys like my whole training program because I pay for that and that would not be very nice. I write, oh, that's very bright. So I write out the movement, and then I write out the sets, and then the reps, and then tempo if I have it, and then the rest period. So I'll generally write things as sets, or I'll go this way because of the way you see it, sets times reps. So if it's 3 sets of 8, I will just write 3x8 or 3 by 8, and then I will write the corresponding tempo if there's one prescribed right next to it on the right, and then in parentheses at the very end I'll write my designated rest periods for that set. And then I will put underneath the 3x8 or the 3 by 8, I'll put, if it's 3 sets, I'll put 3 different @ signs. That way I can write what weight I used for each respective set. So this becomes really, really cool, not just for reporting my training to my training coach, but also when it comes to looking back. So this one is a relatively new training journal. I just used it since I started a neurological phase. This one was over. But what I can do is I can go back, this was the training journal that I started after my explant, and I can go back and look at my progression. So right before, when I started on February 5th, 2019, also I always write the date in the top right-hand corner, and then somewhere along that top place I'll also write what gym I was at. So for example, this day it says at KH because I was at Katie's gym. So for example, something that's really cool about being able to go back and look at your progression is within a given training cycle, I can see just how much I improved. I can see that whether I look at the Excel sheet or I can see that by going back through and looking at my training journal. So for example, in my last, I believe it was a hypertrophy phase, I had single arm dumbbell rows programmed within week 1, which was February 5th. I was rowing 50 to 55 pounds per arm. And then a few weeks later, February 26, 2019, I was rowing 65 to 70 pounds per arm. So it's cool to be able to just go back and track your progression. And I think that's really important from any, sorry, Luna's down here, serious trainee's perspective, is because it gives you the ability to track progressive overload. So progressive overload is basically just doing more over time, whether that's doing more sets, whether that's doing more reps, whether that's doing more weight, whether that's doing better technique. There's a lot of different ways to progressively overload, but having something like a training journal where you can physically see on paper, like, oh, I did 5 more reps this week, or oh, I added 5 pounds to such and such lift this week. That gives you the ability to actually see on paper in real time that progression. And that's especially useful for people that are in a reverse diet phase, especially because it's really, really difficult in a reverse diet phase because it's not as instantly gratifying as fat loss. Within a fat loss phase, you're seeing changes pretty regularly, like weekly, whereas muscle growth is a lot more subtle in terms of scale weight, in terms of visual. It takes a lot longer to build muscle. So being able to see, hey, I'm progressing in training. So while it may take a little bit longer to see those changes are still happening. That's a really valuable just use for tracking your training, especially in the context of a reverse diet. And then in the context of someone like me that's in an active fat loss phase, you can kind of see where your strength stands as you progress with your fat loss. So for me, I've consistently increased strength. I think a lot of that is largely due to having a more moderate deficit, but then also just having a healthy body again, which I haven't had for a very, very, very long time. But if you track your training throughout a deficit, you can kind of see, okay, here's how my strength progressed throughout. Here's where things kind of started to level off. Here's maybe where strength started to drop. Here's where my recovery was poor. Here's where such and such thing happened, whatever it is. So just tracking your training over time helps you become a more intelligent and aware trainee, which is something that I am a big, big fan of. So it's just a nice, very efficient way to track your progression in the gym, make sure that you're staying on top of your training programming and making sure that you're training intelligently. You can also make notes in there based on feel. So for example, if my hip injuries start flaring up again, I can make a note of that. If I had to do extra warm up because I was super stiff, I can make a note of that. If I was really, really tired for XYZ reason, I can make a note of that in there. So it just gives you the ability to track your training, which is kind of the purpose. And part of the reason why I wanted to make this video too is because I think that the current social media climate doesn't really encourage structured, proper training programming. It's kind of a, well, let me just go on Instagram and see whose workout I like today and I'll do that kind of situation, which is not a philosophy that I personally believe in. If that's what you want to do and if that's, you know, what you love, then great. You're more than welcome to do that, but that's not my philosophy and that's not how I believe optimal progression is achieved from a training perspective. I personally believe in having, like I've said a bajillion times, structured, intelligent programming, not just going into the gym and doing whatever the heck on any given day. And one good one that someone asked was common training abbreviations used. So probably my most common ones are SA, DB, BB, KB, and HE, and CS, NG, WG. So I'm not going to remember it in that order. But SA, single arm, so if I have a single arm movement, or SL would be a single leg movement. HE would be heels elevated, so something like an HE back squat would be a heel elevated back squat. For me, I would just wear my lifters because that provides heel elevation. If it's something like BB, DB, or KB, that's barbell, dumbbell, kettlebell. RDL, Romanian deadlift. DL is just deadlift. CS, chest supported. NG or WG, neutral grip, wide grip. UH would be underhand. I abbreviate so much stuff, like so much stuff. For example, I put chest sup PD, so chest supported pull down. I could put CSPD, chest supported pull down. Horiz UB row, horizontal upper back row. DB lateral is just dumbbell lateral. HD leg press, hip dominant leg press. QF, quad focus, so something like a quad focus leg press. DBOHP, dumbbell overhead press. Those are some of my most common abbreviations, I would say. Those are the ones that I use the most. It just makes it a little bit more concise writing in there. Why does this keep falling down? Y'all are just seeing a lot of my bra today. It's fine. It's all gravy. So another thing that I will do in here is I will have a page devoted to the phase that I'm on. So if I'm in a neurological phase, if I'm in a hypertrophy phase, and if I'm in a metabolic phase, I will write that. So at the start of the phase, I wrote phase, neurological, then the start date, which was March 4th, and then I'll go ahead and write out the split. So what I do Monday, what I do Tuesday, what I do Wednesday, what I do, and so on and so on. That way, as I flip through and look back, I can kind of say, hey, this was where I was at within this phase. This was when this phase started. This was when this phase ended, that kind of thing. So it just gives me a better idea of what my actual training phases have looked like as well. So I can take, you know, the look at the microcycle and then compare it to like the mesocycle type situation. That's kind of the concept of why I would do that. Do you chart progress in lifts / other training numbers over time? If so, how? So just generally speaking, I have a relative idea of my maxes on like my main movements. So the most I've ever back squatted is 250, most I've ever deadlifted is 300. I'm not sure the most I've ever strict overhead pressed with a barbell. The most I've ever strict overhead pressed with dumbbells, I believe, is 50s. It's either 40s or 50s because I can't find the training video of me doing 50s. And I'm pretty sure there would have been a video, so it might be 40s, which I just did last week. So matching old PRs, great. When I Olympic lifted, I obviously knew my Olympic lift maxes. Hip thrust, I think I just PR'd my hip thrusts this week with 315. I can't remember if it was a lifetime PR or not. It might have been, I'm not sure. But I have a general idea in terms of main movements. There's some auxiliary movements that I don't really care to track PRs on, but main bread and butter movements for me, I do have a general just mental catalog of my PRs. And as far as the actual training journal itself, these are both just from Target. I literally just go to the notebook section at Target and pick one out. I've had this exact same corkboard one, like multiple ones of it, I think for like 3 or 4 different training journals. And truthfully, they just didn't have it last time I went. So got this nice sleek black one to match the aesthetic. And yeah. So that is kind of it with training journals. Again, I'm a big fan of training journals. I don't want to be sitting on my phone typing out workouts throughout my whole workout. I just don't want to be on my phone. Like, I'm on my phone enough throughout the day. I would rather have a pen and paper in my hand and be able to write things out. I'm very much so a writer. And yeah, and then I just transferred over to my Excel spreadsheet when I send my updates at the end of the week. So that is kind of it for me on why I use a training journal, how I use a training journal. If there's any, that's kind of just the basics. If there's any specific questions on my training journal, how I use it, that I didn't answer in this video, you're more than welcome to leave them in the comments below. But I think that is going to be about it for this video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Hopefully you learned something cool. And I really do hope that this inspired you to follow a more structured training program. Again, it's something that I believe a ton in. That's where I have seen the most progression over the years, not just right now, but in years past. And I do firmly believe that having some kind of structure within your training program is the surest way to see the progression that you want to see. And I think it's a huge missing link for a lot of people. So it's something that I would really encourage you to find a good program or find a good coach to do programming for you. And I'm sure you will make a lot more progress than you ever expected. So that is going to be about it for me today. If you enjoyed this video, if you learned something, if you liked it, leave a comment below, give this video a thumbs up, and I will see you in the next one. I love you so much, and that's it. Bye.